Happy Saturday and welcome back to Bracket Science, where we dissect everything around the college basketball world. And in this case, we're going to dissect everything that has happened this week and what is to come in this upcoming weekend. We have a lot of games to talk about. Many upsets occurred this week. Following talking about these games, we're going to get into some of our fan mail, where we are answering a few questions from some of our followers. Then finally, we will preview that Saturday, which is the start of conference play for many conferences, such as the Big 12 and the SEC. And this is an outrageous stat, but there are 145 Division I basketball games on Saturday. Absolutely wonderful to have college basketball back in full gear. We'll partake in our Pick'em segment, where we pick the lines of some of the biggest games on Saturday and continue to track our results. So let's start off a little bit outside of chronological order. We're going to start with the games that just happened, which included a top 10 matchup with Illinois and Purdue, and the game that previewed that, which was UConn and Butler. Following that, we will talk about the rest of the week of college basketball. Thanks for listening. So let's start with the big one of the night, which was a top 10 matchup in the Big Ten. It was number 9 Illinois traveling to number 1 Purdue, and Purdue led this game the entire game. It was a blowout for a while, and then Illinois slowly but surely fought back with the help of Marcus Domask. Purdue still won 83-78, but it was a fight by the Fighting Illini. Domask scored 26 points. Zach Edey got into foul trouble, which helped Illinois' chances. He only had 10 points, still had 15 rebounds, was 5 of 5 shooting. Does what he does. Trey Kaufman-Renn was the story for Purdue. He had 23 points on 8 of 12 shooting. Purdue looked like the better team the entire game, looked like a national champion lock almost, if I can say so. But slowly but surely, this Illinois team fought back. A lot of heart for Illinois. A little bit skeptical on Purdue now after that showing. We saw how talented they were, but they can't just coast like they did in this game. Great win for Purdue, little bit questionable. Still a good fight by Illinois. The game that was before that, we'll just say, was number 4 UConn visiting Butler. And Butler actually led by 7 at the half, but UConn scored 53 points in the second half to win the game 88-81. Great win for the Huskies there. Tristan Newton had 17 points. He was only 1 of 8 from 3 of 12 from the field. Not very efficient. He played 37 minutes, though. Alex Caravan had a big night, 20 points, 4 of 6 from 3. 4 starters in double figures. Stephon Castle looked great as a freshman, 14 points, 9 rebounds. Cam Spencer added 14 points, and he was a spark for them. Shout out to Butler. They played great. DJ Davis had 22 points. Butler is right there if they could just pull out some of these wins. Couple of good matchups tonight on FS1. All right, now let's go back a little bit and move back to Tuesday, and we'll talk about Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Starting on Tuesday, the big game was number 1 Purdue visiting Maryland in a game where many thought Maryland might be able to upset the number 1 team in the nation, but Purdue went in there and just dominated the entire way. Zach Edey did Zach Edey things. Scored 23, 12 rebounds. Not a lot to get into this game. It was a blowout from the get-go. Let's move on. Number 8, North Carolina traveled to Pitt. North Carolina won 70-57. North Carolina seems to be all the way back from last year, if I do say so myself. Going into Pitt in a tough environment, beating them by 13. Harrison Ingram missed his first 11 shots in this game, but he contributed elsewhere. He's such a great player, the transfer from Stanford. He secured 15 rebounds in the game, with Armando Bacot also adding 10 rebounds of his own, along with 16 points. North Carolina is now 2-0 in the ACC. Pitt drops to 0-3 at the bottom by themselves. Yikes. North Carolina's test will come on Saturday, today, later in the day, at Clemson, which we are going to discuss a little bit later in the show. We'll talk about that here in a bit. Let's move on, and it was Northwestern visiting number 9 Illinois in Illinois' first test without Terrence Shannon prior to this Purdue game that we just talked about. And Illinois blew him out 96-66. Marcus Domask, he dominated in this game. He had 32 points on 11 of 15 shooting. He'll step into that massive role with Shannon gone. As we talked about a little bit earlier, that was a key win for Illinois moving into Big Ten play.
Butler visited St. John's, both teams near the bubble in our bracketology, and St. John's won 86-70. Rick Pitino seems to have this St. John's team rolling. As of right now, they move into our tournament, and this would be amazing for Pitino to get into the tournament in his first year at St. John's. This team of transfers turning it around over there. They're looking good. Joel Soriano, get to know that name. He is a special player. Syracuse visited number 14 Duke in a close game in the first half, but Duke just ran away with it, dominated the second half, 186-66. Seems Duke is starting to become Duke again and could maybe compete for an ACC title in the regular season. We know anything can happen come postseason and conference tournament play, but maybe, just maybe in the regular season. I'm not so sure of it. I think it's going to be either Clemson or North Carolina as of now, but Duke is not far below them. Duke and even Miami, not far below them. We'll get into Miami here when we talk about Wednesday's games. Final game we're going to talk about on Tuesday was New Mexico visiting number 13 Colorado State. Colorado State won 76-68, and Colorado State proved how legit this team is, beating one of the best teams in the Mountain West. Isaiah Stevens is one of the best point guards in college basketball. For those who do not know, he's for Colorado State. In this game, he scored 18 points, 8 assists. I think he's third in the nation in assists per game right now. He's really good. He is fun to watch. Let's just take a look at the Mountain West in general real quick. Colorado State, Nevada, Utah State, all 13-1 on the year. San Diego State and New Mexico, 12-2. Boise State, UNLV beat Creighton earlier in the year. Boise State is always solid. This could easily be at least a 4, maybe 5 at-large bid league this year. The Mountain West doing something special over there. A lot of people believe the Mountain West is even better than the likes of the ACC and even the Pac-12 this year. It's tough. It's a good conference. Glad to see it happen. Let's move on to Wednesday, and this was our upset day. It started with Seton Hall visiting number 23 Providence. Seton Hall went in and beat them 61-57. I mean, what is going on with Seton Hall? Could this be a tournament team? They beat UConn in that first Big East game. Followed up, they traveled to Xavier, and this Xavier team is not very good this year for their standards. And Seton Hall got beat by 20 by Xavier. Now they're beating Providence at home. This is Kim English's first loss at home. I mean, I don't know what's going on with Seton Hall. They're 9-5 on the year, 2-1 in the Big East now. They lost to Rutgers, Iowa, USC, who have all been, quite frankly, pretty bad this year. They now have 2 wins over some top Big East teams, none of them, with one of them being in that road environment at Providence, which really got people by storm because Providence beat Marquette at home. Now Seton Hall's beating them at Providence. I have no clue what to do with this Seton Hall team in terms of bracketology. I don't know how they're going to do going forward. I don't know much about anything of the Seton Hall team. What I do know is they have a lot of talent. They can keep getting quality Big East wins week in and week out because of how tough this conference is this year. If they keep winning these games, it's going to be tough to keep them out of the tournament. And this seems to be a matchup nightmare for a lot of teams. If they were to squeak into a first 4, this team gets hot. They can beat just about anyone. Good win for Seton Hall here. Next game was the game of the night, and it was number 16 Clemson visiting Miami. And Miami won this game quite easily, 95-82, just dominated the second half. This was a huge win for Miami in terms of their resume. Clemson, one of the favorites to win the ACC. I think they were the favorite going in then, just above North Carolina. I think North Carolina and Duke have both overtaken them. Miami had all 5 starters in double figures in this game, and 3 guys scored over 23 points. Incredible stuff there. Nigel Pack led with 25, while Norchad Omier and Matt Cleveland were the other 2, who both added 23 points. Everyone's been a little skeptical of this Miami team. They got drilled by Colorado, drilled by Kentucky. They don't have a lot of quality wins until this one. This game proved that they can play with anyone in the country. This is not a team I would love to run into in the tournament, no matter what seed they are. Made the Final Four last year, the Elite Eight 2 years ago. They win in the tournament, and they seem to still have a very solid squad this year. Miami's now 2-0 in the ACC. Clemson's now 1-1. This ACC race may be tight at the end. Next game, we'll start moving through these a little bit quickly. Some less important games, if you can say. Villanova beat Xavier 66-65. This game was at Villanova. Villanova is now 3-0 and the only undefeated team in the Big East. This team's really good, but when they struggle to score, it can be ugly. Eric Dixon is very good for them, but he can't continue doing all the work. Villanova did win the game. They only shot 38%, so I guess that's good. Usually they've been losing these close games under Kyle Neptune. Now they won this one. They're going to need find some offense if they want to be a legit Sweet 16, Elite 8 contender this year. Indiana traveled to Nebraska. Nebraska killed them 86-70. Nebraska 12-2 on the year, and now 2-1 in Big Ten play. Kisei Tominaga, if I pronounced that right, went off with 28 points. And with him and the likes of Ranked Mask and Bryce Williams, this team is a legit tournament team. Kisei Tominaga is their leading scorer. I have heard a lot of announcers try and pronounce his name, and they seem to change it just about every time. We're going to go with Tominaga. Let's talk a little bit about Indiana. This team is disappointing. Very disappointing. I saw coming into this year they were one of my sleeper teams. They have a lot of talent. Trey Galloway can shoot it. He's actually been very good this year. Khalil Ware, he has been skyrocketing up the draft boards. I mean, he is one of the most agile 7-footers in the nation. He's really good. He blocks shots. He scores. He's in a lot of first rounds now. I've even seen him so far up into the top 15 of some NBA mock drafts. He's really good. Mackenzie Mbako, he was a top 10 recruit. We know how good Xavier Johnson is. He was good last year until he got hurt. And Malik Renew, he's had a pretty good year so far, yet they just aren't a very good team. Remember last year they had Trace Jackson Davis and Jalen Hood-Schifino and only won one game in the NCAA tournament. Some people saw it as a failed season. I guess they made it to the tournament as a 4 seed. They lost in the second round to Miami. It could seriously be considered if they fail to make the tournament with all this talent this year. Mike Woodson could be under a lot of pressure next year to put together a great team to avoid being kicked out of Indiana there, getting let go. This was a huge win for Nebraska, making a case known as a contender for at least second place in the Big Ten this year. You got to think Purdue's probably going to win the regular season. I don't see them not winning. Although for Nebraska, their next 2 games, I guess it would be, in the Big Ten, they'll be playing the only undefeated in the Big Ten left, which is at Wisconsin. Then they get to play at home, but unfortunately that is against that Purdue team. That'll be a tough task the next 2 games. We'll really get to know just how good this Nebraska team is. One more thing to note, UCLA lost a home game to Stanford to move to 6-8 on the year. I'm not even going to talk any more about UCLA. I'm quite frankly tired of talking about them. They're just not very good. They're 6-8. They don't deserve to be talked about. They're not very good, but I like what Stanford's doing over there. They beat Arizona, and now they just beat UCLA at UCLA. Good for Stanford, not good for UCLA. Let's move on to Thursday. Just a couple notable games, and then we'll get into our fan questions. Starting, we just got to talk about James Madison for a second. They visited Louisiana, and James Madison won 68-61. Close game. James Madison now 14-0 on the year. This was one of their key tests that we talked about in conference play that could ruin their perfect record. With this game being at Louisiana, we knew it would be tough. Louisiana made the tournament last year, but James Madison holds strong. It may now be up to Appalachian State to take down James Madison to ruin their perfect season, or else it would be a fairly big upset if James Madison were to lose to anyone else in the Sun Belt. Good for James Madison. Hope they keep it going. The game of the night was Colorado at number 10, Arizona, and unfortunately for anyone who watched this game, it was an absolute blowout. 97-50, Arizona won. Good Lord, Arizona. This was following that Arizona upset loss at Stanford, where they let Stanford score 100 points, and Stanford shot the lights out. I understand that. But to do this the next game just shows how good Arizona can be. Colorado's the second favorite to win the Pac-12. This isn't no slouch of a team. And Arizona just beat them by 47. They played their bench for most of the second half. Arizona held Colorado to 36% shooting on the game, 26% from 3. Arizona's just on a different level, and games like this show how good they can be both offensively and defensively. We talked about their balance. We've talked about their balance all year. Pele Larson, he led Arizona this game, 18 points. Caleb Love added 16, and Krivas came off the bench. He had a big night, scoring 15 on 7 of 8 shooting and 9 rebounds. This was a good game for him to get him a little bit more involved in a blowout affair, show what he can do, and this Arizona team is scary. Now, even with this massive win and massive loss, they're both now just 2-1 in the Pac-12 play. Should be a fairly should be Arizona winning this conference, I would think. Colorado would probably be my second choice, but we're going to talk about the next game, and we're going to discuss the Oregon Ducks a little bit, as Oregon traveled to Washington, and Oregon beat them on the road 76-74. This was a game we noted as could be a big game come bubble watch in March. Oregon and Washington kind of hovering over it. Washington now drops out of there. They're 8-6 on the year. They're well off the bubble as of now. Just a couple weeks ago, we actually had them in our tournament, not even in the first four, as we had them as a 12 seed, I think, getting a bye, and now they're well off, 8-6 on the year. But anyways, for this game, for those who do not know Jackson Shelstad, get used to him. He's Oregon's leading scorer this year. He led them in this game with 17 points. They're getting N'Faly Dante back too, who is a beast down low. He's played one game, and I think he had 24 rebounds the first game or something. Oregon's now 3-0 in Pac-12 play. Washington now 0-3 in Pac-12 play, which we should also discuss. But for Oregon, starting off 3-0, just now getting N'Faly Dante back, this team may be one of the teams to beat in the Pac-12, kind of like the Big Ten, where they're kind of playing for second place. The third Pac-12 matchup we'll talk about was Utah visiting Arizona State. Everyone seems to really love Utah this fall, and I just really never saw it. I saw them play St. John's, and they just got outmatched by St. John's. But I didn't really expect them to lose this game at Arizona State. Arizona State beat them 82-70. With that being said, Arizona State is now 3-0 in the Pac-12 with wins over Stanford, Cal, and now this Utah game. But yet they had lost 3 straight going into conference play, a little bit up and down for the other Hurley over there. Jose Perez went off in this game for the Sun Devils. He scored 26 points, went 4 of 5 from 3. It sure seems no team is going to be a free win in the Pac-12 this year. The worst teams in the Pac-12 may be Cal, and we've seen they have some serious talent over there. Then probably UCLA might be the second worst in that conference. You can say Oregon State, but Oregon State's resume is better than UCLA right now. And then it's probably USC. USC is 7-7. Definitely didn't see those couple of those teams coming, but that is what happens, especially in the Pac-12, as we have learned over the years. A couple other notable games. Michigan State beat Penn State by 31 at home. It was a blowout. And number 15, Memphis, they held off a late Tulsa run, and they won by 3 in the AAC. That is this week's recap of college basketball so far. Let's start, and we'll get right into some of the fan questions right after a quick break. Alrighty, let's answer some of these fan questions. This first one is from Connor Clark on Twitter. After Longwood's loss to Winthrop, is Longwood still the favorite or one of the favorites to win the Big South? This is a great question. Thanks for sending in this question. I watched most of this game, unfortunately, and it was tough to watch Longwood eventually lose this game because they were the better team in this game for, I'd say, at least 30, 35 minutes all throughout the first half and even into the second half. I think they were leading like 46-37 or 48-39, something like that. At one point, there was only like 7 minutes left, But they ended up losing the game to Winthrop. Winthrop ended up beating them in overtime, 68-60. So I looked up, did a little bit of research. According to the analytics, Longwood currently has a 15% chance of having at least a share in the Big South regular season. High Point's actually the favorite by analytics with a 67% chance. Seems a little bit high. This is by Bart Torvik, by the way. And Winthrop is next with a 27% chance. In terms of the books, talking about FanDuel, Winthrop and High Point are both tied as the favorite at plus 300. Longwood is next at plus 430. From the eye test, I think Longwood is the best team in this conference. They were my pick preseason. I'm sticking with it for now. I think at plus 430, this value is pretty good. They have great size. They got that big guy down low. I wouldn't be shocked if they were to win the regular season. I could definitely see them winning the postseason tournament. I like this Longwood team. I think Winthrop has a lot of talent, but I think Longwood is a little bigger. We'll see how they do when they play. Get some conference home games there in the Big South. Thanks for that question. That was a good question. I like this Longwood team a lot. Now we got one from Ashton H on Instagram. What are your thoughts on the Dayton Flyers? And I am so glad you asked this question. Dayton is my team this year. I watched that game where they traveled to Cincinnati just down the road for them and just beat up on Cincinnati. Watched them outmatch Davidson just a couple days ago, who was supposed to give them a run for their money in this game and even in the A10. I talked about it in one of my earlier podcasts, but Dayton is projected to go undefeated in the A10 this year, according to KenPom Analytics. They don't play St. Bonaventure at St. Bonaventure this year, so that really helps them because I don't think they would necessarily be favored in that game. As of right now, I have Dayton as a 9 seed in my bracketology. This is a team I could easily see making a run deep this year. We saw them do it. Well, how many years ago was that? That had to have been 10 years ago now. Their style is just running and shooting threes from everywhere on the floor, and they just shoot it with confidence. I love watching this team play. They're fast. I think without a doubt they will win the A10 fairly easily, and I think they will be a nightmare matchup come March no matter what seed they are. Great question. Thanks for this question, Ashton. I really like Dayton this year. Now let's talk about Lucas Daggett, also on Instagram. What do you think about Gonzaga this year? Now, Lucas, unfortunately, I was big on Gonzaga in the preseason this year. They lost Drew Timme and Jalen Strother, but I thought bringing in Graham Ike and Ryan Nemhard would heal some of these wounds. I'll have to admit, I think I was just dead wrong about it. I just don't think they're very good or very talented basketball team, honestly. Ryan Nemhard's shooting something stupid like 17 or 16% on the year from three, and he takes a lot of them, too. At some point, you're just not a very good shooter. I'm a big fan of Anton Watson, but I just think he's in a role right now that's just, quite frankly, not suited for him. Gonzaga is currently 9-4 on the year. They don't have any good wins other than Syracuse. I still think they squeak out of the WCC and make the tournament. I don't know. I could see them getting beat in the WCC tournament for sure. This is their most vulnerable year. Still think they win the regular season. I think they're decent enough. But at this pace, they might need to win that WCC tournament to make the NCAA tournament, or else they're not going to be allowed any flukes in WCC play. St. Mary's has been playing better as of late. San Francisco has impressed this year. But I still I think it's Mark Few and it's Gonzaga. I still think they'll figure it out a little bit, but I'm not very high on Mark Few's squad this year. Thanks for the question, Lucas. That's a great question. One more question we'll go over before getting into our preview of the week. The last question comes from Nolan J, also on Instagram. Could Ohio State make another big run in the Big Ten tournament? Now, what I have to say to that, we saw it last year. They're better this year, so they can for sure do it again this year. They seem to score the ball like those old Thad Matta 1-seed Ohio State basketball teams with Jared Sullinger, William Buford. The addition of Jamison Battle has been huge, the transfer from Minnesota. He's come in and he's scoring 15 a night, shooting 45% from three with that pure left stroke. Alongside Roddy Gale, who is not talked about enough. He's one of the most improved players in college basketball this year. He's currently a sophomore. Last year as a freshman, he averaged 4.6 points per game. And now he is also averaging 15 points per game in his sophomore year. I think the Buckeyes are a top 5 Big Ten team. And I think they could win a game or two or even make a little bit of a run in March. They are better. They're carrying that momentum from the Big Ten tournament last year into this year. I like the Buckeyes. I'm from Ohio. I'm a little bit biased. I like this Ohio State team. I like Bruce Thornton. They have a big three of Bruce Thornton, Roddy Gale, Jamison Battle. And they even have some size down low with Okpara and Zed Key. They got a nice squad going over there. Great question. Thanks to everyone for some of these questions. We'll keep having segments like these. We might even have some segments where it's just fan questions, where we can answer all your questions, or even consider starting up a live chat, as I know some of the basketball podcasters do, where we can just talk all the entire time about all the questions that you guys have. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. This was our fan mail questions. All right, let's get into our Saturday games and pick 'em, where we are 20 wins, 9 losses, and 2 ties so far in our pick 'em segments this year. We've been pretty successful so far this year. And as we mentioned earlier, 145 Division 1 games on Saturday. We had to cut it back, so we picked some of the biggest games in what is the start of conference play for a lot of these teams. But we're going to start off with a conference that has already started at 12 o'clock. It is number 7 Marquette visiting Seton Hall, who we just talked about. We really don't know what to do with. Marquette is favored by 6.5 in this game. Both teams come in 2-1 to the Big East. We just discussed how inconsistent this Seton Hall team is. I really, this is a game where no matter what I bet, I feel like I'll do it wrong. I just think Marquette is quite frankly a better team. Even though it's on the road, I'll take them minus 6.5. Not very confidently, though, I will note that. I think Marquette pulls it off, though. Never bet against Tyler Kolek unless it's at Providence. Also at 12 o'clock, a battle of 2 ranked matchups. As we said, the 2 favorites to win the ACC going into this week. May not be the case anymore, but it's number 8 North Carolina visiting number 16 Clemson. This game's on ESPN2, and Clemson is favored by 1.5. This will be our game of the day. North Carolina's coming off that win at Pitt, and Clemson, as we said, is coming off that loss at Miami. PJ Hall versus Armando Bacot. This will be a great matchup. 2 players battling for ACC Player of the Year, along with RJ Davis on North Carolina, and got to mention Kyle Filipowski from Duke as well. This should be a great game to watch. It's just going to be one of those games you watch, and you're like, it is a great basketball game. I'm strictly just picking it because of the home team, and I think Clemson rebounds against that loss. Give me Clemson minus 1.5. I love North Carolina this year. I also love Clemson this year. I think Clemson rebounds and wins this game. Also at 12 o'clock, this game kind of flying under the radar, even though it is on CBS. Mississippi State visits South Carolina. Mississippi State favored by 1.5. Mississippi State comes in at 11-2 on the year, and South Carolina's 12-1. This is the first game of SEC play. Both teams are in our current bracketology. I just quite frankly believe Mississippi State's the better basketball team. They're playing very well. They just got Tolu Smith back, who is a stud. Give me Mississippi State minus 1.5. I think they win this game. At 12:30, number 6 Kentucky visits Florida. Florida favored by 1.5. This game is on ESPN. Kentucky coming in at number 6, and yet they're underdogs at Florida. Very interesting. Kentucky's very young and fast. Florida's very big and experienced. Kentucky now is a lot bigger because they got Aaron Bradshaw cleared. Give me the underappreciated Wildcats on the spread in this game. I think Kentucky's just better. Florida, so-so. They've impressed me. They have not impressed me in some games. I think Kentucky's youth and speed is going to win them this game. Give me the Wildcats. At 1 o'clock, St. John's visits Villanova in a good Big East matchup. This game's on Fox, and Villanova is favored by 4.5. As we mentioned earlier, Villanova is the last undefeated team in the Big East. This will be a great matchup between St. John's Joel Soriano and Villanova Eric Dixon, 2 very big bodies down low. Even when Villanova wins, we saw them against Xavier, they barely win. I'm taking St. John's plus 4.5. I wouldn't be shocked if St. John's won this game. Obviously, Rick Pitino has a lot of Big East experience. I'm taking St. John's. I think they cover the 4.5 at worst. At 2 o'clock, TCU visits the number 2 team in the nation, the Kansas Jayhawks, on CBS. Kansas favored by 9.5 in this game. TCU is 11-2 on the year. Believe it or not, kind of flying under the radar. Yet they just don't really have that good win. That's keeping them out of our bracketology. The losses have come against Clemson and against Nevada in Hawaii. They lost that game against Clemson at Clemson. So they really haven't lost a home game, but traveling on the road to Kansas is no easy task. Give me Kansas minus 9.5 in a rocking Allen Fieldhouse. This starts Big 12 play. Obviously, Kansas every year is the favorite to win the Big 12. I think Kansas wins this game pretty easily. Their talent just outmatches TCU. At 2 o'clock is another Big East game. Number 23, Providence visits Creighton, unranked Creighton, strangely, and Creighton is favored by 10.5. This game's on Fox Sports 1. Very interesting that an unranked team is favored by 10.5 over a ranked team in any scenario. But I guess that's just the Big East this year. It is a strange conference. Can't believe I'm saying it, but I will take Creighton minus 10.5. I just quite frankly don't think Providence is that good. And unfortunately, they just lost Bryce Hopkins, which makes them a lot worse. Creighton, I think, will just outmatch them in pretty much every category. I think Kalkbrenner rebounds after his poor game last week. I think Creighton dominates them in this game. Also at 2 o'clock on ESPN2, number 25 Auburn visits Arkansas. Auburn is favored by 3.5, and let's just say Auburn is finally ranked. Finally. This should have happened a while ago. They're a very good team. For Arkansas, they come in at 9-4 on the year, and they're in desperate need of a big win in hopes of an at-large bid. With this being said, give me Arkansas plus 3.5, and I will even take Arkansas to win this game. First game of SEC play, we saw just what Bud Walton Arena can be like in that game against Duke. This will without a doubt be another one of those games against a ranked opponent in Auburn. Give me Arkansas. I think they win this basketball game. At 2:15, a game we talked about a little bit earlier, Nebraska visits number 21 Wisconsin. On the Big Ten Network, Wisconsin is favored by 7.5. Both teams are coming in red hot. Give me Wisconsin to cover the points, though. I think their offense is just too much for Nebraska to handle. I am high up on this Wisconsin team. I wasn't coming around at first because they had some of those questionable losses. They got drilled by Providence. But now this team has come together, and I can see this team being a legit Elite Eight team. I like the Badgers a lot. I think they beat Nebraska pretty easily. At 6 o'clock, a big jump from 2:15 to 6 o'clock. Nothing great in the middle there. There's some games to watch, but nothing too special. This is another ranked-on-ranked matchup, SEC game. Number 22, Ole Miss visits number 5, Tennessee. This game does not have a line out on FanDuel yet, but Tennessee is favored by 14 at KenPom. This game's on the SEC network. Ole Miss is still undefeated, but unfortunately they have to, their first SEC game of the year, they have to go on the road and take on the favorite to win the SEC in Tennessee. I think Ole Miss is a little bit better than people give them credit for. They're still undefeated. KenPom actually projects them to go 4-14 in SEC play, which is just crazy to me. This team is not a bad basketball team. They beat Memphis. They beat NC State by 20. I think Ole Miss covers this 14 points if this were to be the line. Maybe a little less than that. Maybe 12.5, 13.5. This may come back to bite me. I quite frankly could see Tennessee's offense just rolling through this game at home and winning by 30 or so. But I could also see it being a game where, Tennessee's up by 10, Ole Miss fights back until Tennessee maybe pulls away a little bit late. I'll take Ole Miss plus 14 in this game. I'm excited to see this one go down, see how Chris Beard handles this at Tennessee. Also at 6 o'clock is Iowa State visiting number 11 Oklahoma on ESPN+. That's how good the slate is. Iowa State and Oklahoma on ESPN+. Oklahoma's favored by 3.5. Iowa State comes in at 11-2 on the year. Oklahoma's 12-1. The only difference is Oklahoma has at least played a few games that mean something, unlike Iowa State. Computers love Iowa State. I quite frankly do not. Oklahoma blew out Providence by 21, also has wins over Arkansas and Iowa. Iowa State also beat Iowa in a true home game. That's about it for Iowa State. The computers love them because they blow out the bad teams. Give me Oklahoma minus 3.5. Give me Oklahoma to win by more than 10. I think Oklahoma wins this game fairly easily. At 8 o'clock, Utah visits number 10, Arizona. Arizona favored by 10.5. This game's on the Pac-12 network. We talked about both teams a lot earlier in the show, so I'll just take my obvious pick, and everyone knows I'm going to take Arizona minus 10.5. Even coming off that blowout win, hopefully they don't have a domination hangover, as they might call it. Utah just lost by 12 at Arizona State, and Arizona State's not even the best team in the nation with the name Arizona in it, so give me Arizona minus 10.5 for sure. Texas Tech visits number 20 Texas at 8 o'clock as well. Texas favored by 3.5. Expect that line to go up a little bit, as we'll talk about here in a second. This game's on ESPN2. Texas Tech's one of those teams that's kind of flying under the radar. They're 11-2 on the year. So is Texas, as a matter of fact. Just got news a couple hours ago. Pop Isaacs got arrested for assault, who is Texas Tech's point guard and probably their best player. Tough blow for Texas Tech. This line may shift up a little bit for Texas. Texas just got Dylan Dessou back a couple games ago. and has turned this team around immediately. Dylan DeSue looks just like his old self. I think Texas wins and covers this 3.5, but keep an eye out if that line goes up a little bit. Texas Tech, not bad. Might not be as good with Pop Isaacs not going to be there. I expect him to still put up a decent fight, but I think Texas wins this game. Ohio State visits Indiana, and this game is a pick'em, and it is on Fox. 50-50 game. I don't like Indiana. I think Indiana's bad. I could see Indiana winning this game, especially at Assembly Hall. I live in Ohio. For that sake, give me the Buckeyes. Ohio State has been choking a few leads, though. They almost choked against Rutgers, where they led by 20 plus. They choked that lead against Penn State in the second half. And this will not be an easy environment, obviously, at Assembly Hall. We saw what Indiana was doing to Kansas, and Kansas is obviously a lot better than Ohio State. Saw what Indiana was doing to them at home. I could see this kind of being an ugly one for Ohio State, but I could also see Ohio State winning this game just because Indiana seems to have kind of given up on Mike Woodson over there. This team's so talented, as we talked about, but just has not been very good. So I'm taking the Buckeyes. A little bit biased there, but give me Ohio State. At 9 o'clock, number 13 Colorado State visits Utah State in another pick'em. This game is not even on TV. Both teams are 13-1, and this game is not even on TV. Come on, CBS Sports Network or Fox Sports 1 or something. Someone pick this game up. This will be a great game. Both teams in our tournament as of right now. Of course, Colorado State, I think we have as a 5 seed. Utah State as a 10 seed. Mountain West is very good, as we talked about earlier. Utah State is also one of those environments that is also always nuts. Give me Utah State to win this game and finally get some respect from some of the people. I love Utah State. I love Colorado State. If it wasn't at Utah State, I probably wouldn't be taking them, but give me Utah State in this game. Final game we'll talk about is at 10 o'clock. Cincinnati visits number 12 BYU. BYU favored by 10.5 on ESPN2. Seems like a few too many points. I'll be taking Cincinnati plus 10.5. Some people are a little concerned about BYU. BYU is all the way up to third at KenPom right now. Pretty nuts there, but a lot of people are concerned with them going into the Big 12, saying they might go below 500. I still think they're a pretty solid team. I think both these teams might. Cincinnati for sure will be sub 500 in the Big 12, but I think BYU will hover around that 500 mark. But give me Cincinnati plus 10.5. I think they can cover 10 points fairly easily. That is it for the Saturday slate. What a lovely day of college basketball. I will be glued to the screens. Very excited for it. Hopefully you guys are too. That will conclude our episode for the day. As always, thanks to everyone for listening. It is going to be a great Saturday of college basketball. Hopefully everyone will be tuning into some of these games. As always, give us a follow on Instagram and Twitter at Bracket Science with 2 S's, or on Facebook at Bracket Science 2 words. We post everything college basketball on there, whether it is betting advice, big games, upsets, games of the day, everything on any of those pages. Be sure to give us a like and a subscribe, whether you're listening to this on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. We appreciate it. We're trying to grow the show a little bit more, get some more listeners coming into March Madness to prepare everyone for the bracket season. Thanks again for listening. Everyone have a great rest of their weekend. Stay safe. See you later.